Excellencies, members of the diplomatic corps, ministers, ladies and gentlemen.
ክቡራት እና ክቡራን ለአፍሪካ ህብረት
According to the Ethiopian calendar, September 11th, 2007 marked the beginning of the third millennium. The nearly 8-year difference as compared to the Gregorian calendar comes from the fact that the calendar begins not with Christ's birth, but with the moment of his incarnation, counting from the day of the Annunciation.
I hope the new millennium will be an era of peace and prosperity to all of us, and my best wishes for a peaceful and wonderful Ramadan too. Thank you.
Ethiopia, as its inhabitants claim with pride, was for centuries an island of Christianity in a sea of non-believers. Today, however, the island is beginning to founder in a landscape increasingly dominated by Islam. In 1950, Muslim made up 25% of Ethiopia's population. By 1997, the proportion had risen to 35%, whilst today, according to various sources, the number stands at 40 or even exceeds 50%. Irrespective, everyone agrees that Islam is the country's fastest growing religion.
Islam came to Ethiopia in the 7th century, and then slowly it expanded itself. Now, the last 10 years, politically, the Muslims have been involved. We have a good number of Muslim ministers, Muslim parliamentarians, Muslim ambassadors, also a good number of regional state presidents.
When you go from Jima to Addis, you will see how many new mosques along the roadside. And when you come from the other side, from Awassa to Addis, or when you come from the north to Addis, they all say the same thing. You see how many mosques.
As recorded in the Acts of the Apostles and as recounted by historians, Christianity reached Ethiopia in the 1st century. Shortly after Christ's death, Deacon Philip found himself at the court of Ethiopia's Queen of Candace, where he met a courtier who became a Christian. On returning to Ethiopia, he recounted all to his sovereign, who also adopted the Christian faith, was baptized, and introduced Christianity throughout her kingdom. And so David's prophecy was fulfilled. Ethiopia will rise and extend its hands to God. 300 years later, Christianity once again reached Ethiopia thanks to brothers, Odysseus and Frumentius, Phoenician Christians who traveled throughout the Red Sea area.
Pirates seized their ship. They were sold to the royal court, where they served the future king as teachers, who gave them their liberty once they achieved adulthood.
Qui les a libérés à sa majorité. Et ils avaient fait des espèces de chapelles.
They built kind of chapels in order to support their Christian faith. They spoke about their faith. One of them returned to the Middle East. The other set to the Patriarchate of Alexandria, where he met the famous Saint Athanasius, to whom he recounted what was going on in Ethiopia. Saint Athanasius consecrated him a bishop and sent him back to Aksum in Ethiopia. He was ordained around 328, and that is how the church was born here.
Et c'est comme ça que l'Église a commencé.
Ethiopia was the second Christian state to make Christianity a state religion after Armenia. So it is quite old. In the 4th century it became official.
King Ezana's conversion, Odysseus and Frumentius' former disciple, proved decisive in shaping Ethiopia's culture and history setting it apart from the rest of Africa. The king built many churches and spread the Christian faith throughout Abyssinia. The people called him Abba Salama, Father of Peace, title still given the head of the Abyssinian church. Christianity developed unhindered up until the 6th century, when the Persians occupied the whole of the Middle East, depriving Ethiopia access to the Red Sea. The next century saw the Prophet Mohammad instruct his followers to seek safe refuge in northern Ethiopia, at that time known as Abyssinia, where they would find a king who does not wrong anyone. And so Muhammad's followers, including his son-in-law, finally reached Ethiopia in 615. The Prophet instructed his followers who had come there to respect and protect the country.
Ethiopia, it has a very ancient culture which unites elements from the ancient Middle East and Africa. It's a country where all the original Abrahamic religions, Judaism and Islam and Christianity, flourished and coexisted from a very early time, and where they had a special nature which was different. For example, the traditional nature of Ethiopian Orthodox Christianity is much closer to Islam and Christianity in its practices and observance than Western Christianity.
Ethiopian Christianity believes accommodating, hosting a stranger is part of our tradition and part of our teaching. So that is how Muslims were also accepted in Ethiopia. And Muhammad, even at that time, he said to all Muslim nations, Ethiopia is the only country that opened her door to host us. So don't persecute Ethiopians.
Relations between the Ethiopians and the Muslims have historically remained cordial, with mutual trade and mutual religious tolerance, some of which grew out of real religious similarities. However, in subsequent centuries, the Muslim population has grown in number, becoming increasingly wealthy and influential. As early as the 10th century, Harar, a major commercial center located in eastern Ethiopia, became the fourth holiest city in the Islam world, with mosques springing up on every corner. For Ethiopia's Christians, this was a time of trying to maintain their national and religious identity. In the 12th century, King Lalibela began building Ethiopia's new capital city in a remote and mountainous area of the country, thereby assuring him and his subjects safety. Named after him, the complex of 12 churches hewn out of solid rock survives to this day, a masterpiece of church architecture, evidence of Christianity's latter-day strength. In subsequent centuries, despite numerous armed conflicts with Muslim neighbors, Christianity managed to retain its dominance in Ethiopia. Islam's rapid expansion did not come about before the 20th century. Ever richer from trade and services, Muslims became an ever more influential part of Ethiopian society, gaining a dominant position over their poorer Christian brethren. However, it was not until the most recent decades, with the spread of an aggressive strain of Islamic fundamentalism, that relations between the followers of two religions worsened to a point where armed conflicts became ever more prevalent.
The Muslims have much more political influence. What has also happened is that there has been much more economic cooperation between the Arab countries and Ethiopia. And Ethiopia has many natural resources which the Arab countries don't have. And this also opens a path for cultural and religious influence. there has been more influence from international Islam, and many of and a lot of madrasas and other foreign Islamic institutions have been opened here.
Fundamentalist groups who came through Somalia to convert Ethiopia, they were found red-handed with all their materials, the money in cash even, and even weapons. So it's just to tell you, whoever comes here, they sensitize, they agitate the Muslims. They want them to react, to show Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
We have the threat of the infiltration of Islamistic groups or fundamentalistic trends coming into the country. So that is what we are afraid of. I think we have to work hard on teaching tolerance and respect and mutual, let us say, collaboration. But we are afraid that the youth can be, especially the Muslim youth, can be influenced, and there can be a change.
The religious Muslim teachers are there to mobilize the Muslim community through teaching, discipline and training. These groups base themselves in Addis Ababa, from where they send their young, Quran-educated students out to all parts of the country. They are instructed to visit all Muslims and call them to prayer and teaching. They teach how Muslims should live and act as true followers of Islam, which is how, throughout the country, they manage to attract many young Muslims to the faith.
Huge amounts of money from Islamic countries greatly exceed those that we, the Church, could bring in. These are two different worlds. We therefore have to take great care, because development can come from Islam. Islam is undoubtedly a much greater force than it used to be.
Islam is a universal religion, and our Ethiopian Muslims have, let us say, solidarity expressions coming from the other Muslim countries. And there is globalization also in the Muslim world, if you want, in the Islamic world. So they receive many good things, but also they can receive bad things. So the jihadist movements, people who are related to the fundamentalist groups, are pushing for a certain infiltration.
Violence against Christians in Ethiopia has intensified in recent years. In October 2006, Muslim militants attacked a Christian church in Jimma. 5 people were brutally murdered.
They started to pour kerosene on the car and on the church building and set it on fire. People started running and jumping from the burning church. They asked us again and again to say Allah Akbar. God is great. God is great. The priests refused to say Allah Akbar. Then they killed him with a sword. They cut him in 2 parts. And then they started attacking young people and children. They started cutting the hands of the young people with their machetes. They brutally killed a child. One of his ears was cut off by a machete. Then we begged them not to kill us, telling them we have said Allah Akbar, God is great, reciting to save our lives. Then they gathered together and left.
Open conflicts are becoming ever more frequent. An evangelist was beaten to death in the same city in March 2007. In April 2007, 2 people were killed and many injured in the town of Jijida. the result of a bomb planted near a tent in which Christians were gathered for prayer. 2 months later, unknown offenders crucified Sheikh Hamid Adam, who had converted to Christianity.
They say that some people from outside had come to preach Muslims and to say you should be strict, and the more Christians you kill, the higher you will be in heaven. And it seems money is involved.
If you go to the market here in Addis Ababa, if you go to also some of the shops here in Piazza, they are owned by Muslims. And this shows that they have also economical power. In some areas where the Muslims have been the majority and where they have had their own sanctuaries and where they used to have some historical things which took place there, they don't allow Christians to have their own churches or build their own religious and worship places or have their own cemetery.
A strategy first adopted at the 1989 African Muslim Conference stipulates that a mosque should be built wherever there are at least 50 Muslims. Ethiopia has become a leading example of that policy in action. During communist rule between 1974 and 1991, there were less than 100 mosques. 10,000 more were built between 1991 and 1997, and that number further doubled in subsequent years. It is almost impossible to establish how many mosques there are in Ethiopia today, many built without permits, unrecorded, on plots that belong to rich Muslims.
First they build a house to live there, and then slowly they change it in a small mosque, and then slowly they make it a big mosque. They want to do away with the Christians, I think. They want to have Eritrea and Ethiopia, I think, for themselves.
So they are building more and more and more mosques. Formerly, when they build a mosque, it was only a mosque. Now they took our example. Wherever we have churches, we have schools. They give scholarships. But the main teaching is, again, fanaticism.
They are getting help, a lot of help, especially from the Arab world. Now, when we want to build a small church, a small chapel, it is not easy to get funds. Especially in Europe, in other countries, they don't understand us when we ask to build for chapels and churches. And that's very hard for us. But our people like churches. They would like to give whatever they have to build a nice, beautiful church, a nice, beautiful chapel. Well, we don't get it, the Muslims get it.
In Addis Ababa alone, 50 new mosques were built between 2003-2004. The authorities are keen to promote the capital city's newfound role as a bridge between Africa and the Arab world and remain unafraid of Arab expansion. The city's development is all that matters as other investment projects financed by Muslims spring up next to the dozen mosques that are built every year.
The open market system has favored many Muslim investors, and at the moment we have the millionaire investor Sheikh Alamuddin and many others who are investing a lot, and the Muslims are showing to many of us, to our Christians also, that they have economical power.
All this is because of their unity. They are united and they have one voice. We cannot tell this because the government and the people want to handle them kindly, brotherly, recalling the old time history of Mohammedans who migrated to Ethiopia. So they are following that history, and they want to maintain that to avoid escalation, to avoid further conflicts like we observe in Sudan or elsewhere in the world.
Supported by rich fellow Muslims and organizations from rich Arab countries, Ethiopian Muslims not only build new mosques, but also gather followers through financial inducements.
They give money to young people to start a shop or something like that, but you have to be a Muslim.
Some Christians can be tempted and can also end up also being Muslims because of what is being offered.
By inviting the youth who are jobless, who were not able to follow up their education, they have started inviting them by offering them tea, coffee, entertainment, at the same time teaching Quran, and at the end of the program, they would give them a certain amount. This is for you to go home, take a taxi. So that amount is 10, 20 times more than the price of a taxi. So the guy will come back again tomorrow because he earns. And at the end of the day, he is convinced. He comes to my church, what does he earn? Nothing.
Believers of Islam are encouraged to marry Christians. The Quran stipulates that a Muslim's wife also has to be a Muslim. The policy weakens Ethiopia's Christians since their children are also brought up in the Muslim faith. The only way of stopping this silent Muslim expansion in Ethiopia is to strengthen Christian unity by supporting education, helping to finance already existing churches, building new ones, as well as schools and hospitals.
It is up to us to defend ourselves, to struggle, to maintain, to keep our brothers and sisters. And for this, we need good teachers, we need lots of publications, we need lots of religious informations to sensitize the people, including our priests and nuns.
Ethiopia has survived lots and lots of invasions, and many have died just to preserve these Christian values. If you see in North Africa, from Egypt to Morocco, they were Christian states. Now they are all Muslim. Even Sudan is now Muslim. Eritrea is 50% Muslim. We are the only ones, but surrounded by Muslims. Like Djibouti, 99% Muslim, Somalia, 99% Muslim. Until now, we are a Christian majority country. And the people, they want to preserve these Christian values. So they like to see nice chapels, nice churches. And if we can get help, we'll be grateful.
One of the rare international organizations which helps Christians in Ethiopia is the international charity Aid to the Church in Need.
The Church in Need really helps a lot in Ethiopia, in the 10 dioceses, and also in all the congregations which are working here. And they come and visit often. They help us with our diocesan priests in giving mass stipends. But especially what I like about Church in Need is they are becoming more and more our voice. They are becoming more and more, they speak for us, And whenever the other media is not accessible, they try to be the voice of the most needy ones, and I thank them for that.
L'Église catholique en Éthiopie, c'est...
The Catholic Church in Ethiopia amounts to about 1% of the population, or perhaps even less. But in the social field, the Church executes about 90% of Ethiopia's welfare work. And that means schools, clinics, hospitals, and anything and everything that has to do with social welfare.
Enfin, tout ce qui est social. Sans l'Église catholique,
so that without the Catholic Church's involvement, there would be no social welfare at all in Ethiopia. This is something that even the authorities unequivocally recognise when they say that, seeing all the work you do, there must be many more of you than you say. Meanwhile, the truth is different, because after all, they don't even make up 1%.
Irrespective of the conflicts, there are times when Christians and Muslims do work together and solve mutual social problems that affect both communities. Catholic and Orthodox Christians and Muslims from Adigrad have jointly set up the Unity Safe Life initiative.
Difficulty is the mother of discovery. So many people, HIV/AIDS positive, we were worried of these things. And we have to do something, we decided. If we gather together and if we discuss together, we will do something. So we call to each other by this office, Catholic Secretariat. We were given 4 days seminar. After that, immediately we started to know our common problem.
We are here because by strengthening our unity, irrespective of our faith, we strive to help our communities who find themselves in a difficult situation, together. We are aware that the majority of those who are ill are Orthodox Christians. Nonetheless, we know that together, by reinforcing our unity, we will be better placed to help to maximum effect. Our Holy Quran discriminates no one and requires us to do good things without distinguishing the wood from the stone. We must strive to improve things for the better. Hence, our association is not directed to benefit one religious community at the expense of another, rather to benefit all our ill people, to help and support them.
This example shows that interreligious cooperation is possible, but sadly, this is the exception rather than the rule. Paradoxically, in a country that espoused Christianity well before the majority of European states, and that many centuries ago offered Mohammed's persecuted disciples refuge, Christians themselves are becoming a persecuted minority.
The Muslim faith is expanding. As we live in the middle of this kind of reality, if we don't get support from our Christian brothers elsewhere, as other sects and non-Christians receive support, we might lose. My fear is that we might lose, and the quality of faith that we should have could be endangered. I would appeal to other Christians to help us not to lose our faith and our tradition. We need support.